Hello everyone, welcome back to Jake's Scary Unusual. In today's Creative Minds episode, we're going to be going over a concerning lighthouse story about a woman and her dog finding a mysterious lighthouse. If you guys enjoy this episode, please leave a like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate it greatly. Thank you and have a great time watching tonight's video. Bye now. This one day in Maine, there's this woman and her dog, and it's getting close to the fall, so it's getting a little more chilly out. So she's wearing a little bit of a hoodie and a little bit of a throw over, trying to make up for the wind and stuff like that, especially being on the coast. You have that colder weather. She's making her way up this hill, and she sees off to the right what she never seen before. She lived in this town her whole life. She's in her 30s. And, she's looking off to her right, and she sees this lighthouse, this really eerie and spooky lighthouse. It is actually overcast that day. Not really too surprising, being on the coast and all that. But she goes up this hill, makes a right, and get into the lighthouse. And she's just like, you know what? Why not? Let's go all the way up to it. Let's take a look. I'm not doing anything else today. It's my day off. Let's just have a good day. Let's check things out a little bit. You know, she goes up to the door, and she's looking at the door. She's really kind of disturbed by it, just by what was actually written on the door. You know, they whom enter may not exit. And you think it would be like, is this like some kind of like prank? Is this some type of like Halloween decoration? And she was like, no, it couldn't be. So she actually starts slowly walking her way around the lighthouse. It's a big white lighthouse. I'd say it's about 80 to 100 feet tall, and she's making her way, and it's really cool because there's this old like stone bricks, like they're like, I'd say like 6 inches by 6 inches diagonally, and horizontally. It's just like these like decent sized bricks sticking out of the ground. There's moss on them and everything, and there's this really cool like nice moss like little wall. It's about 4 feet tall off to her right, going around the lighthouse. So she continually makes her way around, and she sees off to the right side as she's making her way around the lighthouse. There's a ladder. It's a really old, rusty ladder. She goes up to it, tries to keep the dog a little bit away, like, hey, stay back, because it actually dropped about 40 feet. Actually went down to the cliffside, and there's a bunch of jagged rocks. And right below those jagged rocks, is that rush of just energetic water coming in. Just the tide basically just ravaging the coast. And she's like, oh my, like I don't want to get any closer to this. And she looks at her watch. She's like, oh, it's 2 o'clock. Let's go around the other side of the lighthouse. I didn't realize I was here. She didn't realize she was there for about 30 minutes already. Because of that magnificence of this lighthouse. It's just so epic in so many ways. She was so fascinated and taken back by this lighthouse, the beauty of it. And just kept looking up and just like, this is insane. So she goes around, and she actually realizes she has to watch now. She's making her way around the rest of this lighthouse. There's actually cracks all in the floor outside, and she actually steps on one of those cracks, and the whole foundation of that area lighthouse just moves a foot down. She thought it was going to slide off into the water, but thankfully it didn't. So she moved her way quickly around the rest of the lighthouse. She realizes there's some things in the back of that lighthouse that are actually engraved, and she's trying to make out what it says, but she really can't. She's like, what does this mean? So she makes her way around again to the front door, and she's like, you know what? It's Saturday. I have tomorrow off. It says, those who enter may not exit, but she's like, you know what? I'm sure it's just a prank. Some kids probably put it on the door. But from what she realizes later on is that it was actually engraved in the metal. She didn't really pay too much attention. So she actually says to the pup, she's like, hey, I'm going to tie you up on this post. There's a lot of neighbors around here, it seems. It's daylight. They're probably like, oh, it's probably the owner's dog or something. It's fine. So she let the dog tied up out. There's a little dog, a little white fluff ball. And she opens the door, and it creaks, and there's nothing else going on around her. So all you can hear is this echoing creak of the door opening. And it was really annoying but it spooked her out. It gave her chills down her whole body when she opened this door. She goes in, she closes the door, says bye to her dog, and she looks up the ramp, this really steep stairwell, and she realizes that some of the stairs are missing. And they're wooden stairs, which is really strange. You think they would have, invested in some metal stairs, consider being a lighthouse with rot and all that. But she starts slowly making her way up, and there is a trap door actually at the bottom there that she forgot to mention, earlier on. Is actually when you open that up, it actually goes down to a basement, but it was actually all flooded, which is really strange. Why would it be flooded so high up like that? But after she did that, then she starts walking up the stairs. And she's walking up, and she looks off to her left. And there's actually a kitchen there. And it's really old. Everything's rusted, the cabinets are open, There's actually some crabs in there moving around, and it really didn't make any sense. And she looks at the ceiling, and there's some bats hanging upside down. It's like, this is a lighthouse, It was actually pretty darn dark in there. And she's just going up the stairs and it's creaking, she hears some things. She even hears an owl. And it just, everything started not making much sense. And as she's walking up, it starts getting darker. Even though there's cracks in the supports and, inside the walls from leading into outside light, she's still seeing it got darker. And as she went up the stairs more and more, now she's about 3-4 stories up, it's pitch black in there, even though there's cracks. She can see the light coming in, but it's not lighting up the lighthouse anymore. Nothing was really making sense at this point. She didn't really know what to make of this situation. It was really just off-putting in so many ways. But so she continually walks up the stairs. She actually gets out her phone flashlight. Luckily, her phone was fully charged, so she was actually able to use it and not have to worry about too much. But even that, when she got to about the 5th story and she looks off to her left, there's actually a room there. And it's so dark at this point, even the light isn't really doing much for her. The good thing is, though, is that it did work enough. It's kind of like when you're in a cave really far back, there's no lights. Even the light you have is basically only the stream of where the light is. It doesn't really glow around it like it does in dimmer situations. Or more light situations, it all depends on the lighting. So she goes in this room off to the left, and she looks down, and to her amazement, she looks down, and there's a massive hole in the floor. It just goes straight down like 20-30 feet. And at the bottom, she sees these things moving around. She couldn't make out what it was because her phone flashlight only had so much depth. But there were some creatures and things moving around and slithering around out there. She had no idea what they were. And she saw actually, as she looked down more, it got redder on the sides of the interior wall of the inner lighthouse. Things were really starting to spook her out. She was like, okay, well, I clearly can't get down there. So I'm not going down there. I'm not going into this pit of these creatures down here. Because that's the last thing she needs to do is get involved with whatever the hell is going on down there. So she looks off to her right, and she goes, and she slips on the floor. Luckily, she hasn't fallen, but she does get close. She slips, she grabs onto the ledge. Here, her phone luckily stayed on the ledge, but she slipped. She's hanging on for dear life. And all of a sudden, just as she's about to fall in this pit, this man with a beard and the pipe sticking out of his mouth, he grabs her wrist, and she screams. But he pulls her out, and she grabs her phone, and she is terrified. She can't even move. She's so stiff at this point because this old guy just grabs her wrist and saves her, but she has no clue who he is. But she started thinking really quickly as her heart's racing rapidly, this is probably the lighthouse keeper. He's probably going to tell me what this is and probably going to kick me out for being in here. I shouldn't even be in here in the first place. She picks up her phone, puts it up to his face, and it's this old dude. He was actually funny. He looked like one of the old lighthouse keepers in like the early 1900s, late 1800s. It was just really funny. And she's just like, hey, who are you? I came in here. I was just curious, And he's like, you shouldn't have came here. Did you read what was on the door? And she's like, I did. And he shakes his head and nods. You're never going to leave this place again. You should have never came here. This is a labyrinth. It never ends. I've been stuck here since I was told to man this post back 150 years ago. And the worst part is, she didn't realize when he said that, is that you don't age in this place. He's been the same age since. He was going to do that as a retirement job, back in the 1800s. At this point is in the mid 2020s. And this lady at this point is like, this sucks. This is not what I wanted for my weekend. No one's even going to know where I am. And then he says to her, I haven't aged at all in here. I don't eat. I don't need to drink. It's like constant limbo. And the worst part is, I'm pretty sure time doesn't move when you're in here. So it would be like a dream. You know how some dreams you have, you don't feel like it's been a whole day or a whole week or a whole year? Well, it's like this situation. You're outside of time itself. It's just very spooky. It's like, what the hell do you do in this situation? So her brain starts going all over the place. She's panicking. But he just grabs her shoulder and says, it's okay. I think I have an idea. No one else has ever walked in here before. But I can assure you that I think we can find a way out now that you're here. You can help me. And she has some sigh of relief, but not much, because he's been here for so long. What difference is that going to make at this point? So they start making their way up the rest of this stairwell, this old wooden stairwell, and it's getting darker. But, she's optimistic, and it's nice because he had a lantern, and that lantern actually never goes out. He actually said on the walk up there. And he actually told her a few other unique stories about those creatures in the pit. And those creatures have actually been in there since the beginning. They're actually in there as a trap. They were meant to actually get the old captain, the old boat captain, the current lighthouse keeper, to actually fall in to take his life. They were actually there to put him by the original owner of that lighthouse. And that original owner actually designed the lighthouse too, this labyrinth, this sick curse and this sick wickedness that was put here. So they're making their way up. They're about 70 feet up now, or actually 8 stories actually. So a little higher than that. And, there's this room off to the left, and it's actually his bedroom. And he sits there, and she sits down, and he's like, just take a second, breathe. Let me make you some tea. And, it's funny because she remembers that. She's like, well, he said you don't have to drink or anything. And as soon as he said that and she thought that, he goes out and says, I know I said you don't have to drink, but it's nice to have something warm in this cold, cold place. And she just kind of gets a sigh of relief. For some reason, she has this trust in this man, that she doesn't even know. It's just one of those situations. It's like, it's like actually relieving to actually hear something like this from someone. It's just like, the peace of knowing that, I think I can actually trust this guy. It's just that feeling. I don't know. It's just had this overwhelming peace in her. But he makes the tea, some green tea and stuff, and she drinks it, and she's just relieved. And he goes on to actually tell her about the top of the labyrinth. And he actually said it's quite a bit of trek up still. It was about another 10 stories they had to trek. He didn't go into detail what was up top. All he said is there was light. And so she finishes the green tea, she puts it down, and she says, okay, I think I'm ready to go on and venture up the rest of this labyrinth because I want to get out of here. I want my dog back. I want to be able to do and see my life again. And he just does a slight grin and laughs. He says, what's your name? And she's like, my name's Angelica. What's yours? And he grins and says, you'll find out soon, but I can't tell you now. So he gets up and leads the way, and she follows behind. And they get up about 5 more stories in, doing really well. Her phone battery is doing pretty good too. Surprisingly, that is going down of all things. Everything else isn't, but the phone battery is. And they're up another 5 stories. They have about 5 stories to go. And off to the right now, it's really strange. It's pitch black at this point. There's a hole in the wall. It's about this big, so you can see in quite well. And Angelica goes, what's in that hole? And he looks and he says, there are things in there that you never want to see in your living days, or even after death, which will come someday, and it won't be in here. And she just gives him this horrid stare, and she just doesn't even look. She just actually sprints past, because he started making her way, because she was so shocked. He kept moving though, but she didn't take even a chance to look in that hole. So they keep making their way up, And they keep going, going, going. And she sees something off to the right, about another story up. And there's this thing hanging from the ceiling. And she goes, "What is that?" And he's like, "Do you really want to know? Do you want to know what all these things are in this lighthouse? Is it going to matter to you once we try and get out of here? I can tell you all these things once we get out. It's not worth torturing you over all these things you're curious about right now. It's not worth the pain. It's going to be a disheartening reality if you want to know what these are. And actually the reality is that she didn't know this, but these were actually previous bodies of people that actually got to be in the lighthouse. So after the original owner, there was these other people that actually took over after before him. And he's the only one that survived and actually mastered this labyrinth. These were actually traps set by the original owner that would actually trap people up and take them to the ceiling and just slam them there. It was actually their bones and skeletons, but it's been so long that they kind of got really disformed, and she couldn't really make it out with the light. So that's actually really what happened with this, and that's why he wouldn't say anything, because he didn't want to discourage her and think that she's going to end up in one of those traps too. It was one of those really disturbing situations. But they keep going up, and they actually get up to the top at this point, and he comes out and he's like, "Ah, oh, fresh air." And she gets out there, and she is just amazed at what she sees. She looks all around and she's like, "This is absolutely incredible. This can't be." And he's like, "Yes, it can be, and it is." She looks around, and it is absolutely insane. It's ocean all around this lighthouse, all ocean. And it is roaring waves. And they look down, and it's 50 stories at least, 500 feet of just lighthouse. And it's not only lighthouse, but there's like these weird white cracked buildings, like really square and rectangular long buildings connect to this lighthouse. It's kind of like the shape of a pentagon around the lighthouse itself. It's all like these rooms and stuff, but it was huge. There's no land though in sight anywhere near this lighthouse. It's insane how big this place is. It's a labyrinth outside of this lighthouse. It's wild. There's nothing like it, and there's nothing ever that will be like it. And she's just like, "Okay, so what do we do from here?" And he just smirks again and says, "My name is Dave. It's nice to meet you, Angelica." And she just gets pale white and feels this deep pit in her stomach, and she realizes that was her father's name. You know, she never actually knew her father growing up because her mother was actually a single mother raising her. She met John, which is actually the current father, the father. And it's just crazy because Dave is actually her father. This is the lighthouse keeper. And this is what blows her mind because she felt this immediate connection with him. But it doesn't make sense because if he was born in the 1800s, how could he possibly be her father? It was the early 1900s at that point. Late 1800s. She didn't really know actually at this point because it was just so out there. It was so out in this world. It even blows my mind to this day, of this story, And so they start talking, connecting, and she says, "How can you be my father? You were born so long ago." And he said, "There's a time rift. I actually made it out for a time and met your mother, and we had you, but I went back to the lighthouse because I wanted to close it off forever. But I fell back in, unfortunately, as I was repairing the place, you know, and that is actually how she was born. And he got stuck back in the lighthouse, and he hasn't been able to find the same way out since. It's just really an unfortunate reality that she had a face and he had a face, but he ended up giving her a big hug and said, "It's okay now, I have you. How is your mother?" And she just laughs and says, "She's okay. She's actually in a nursing home now." And he just was shocked. He's like, "How long has it really been?" And, you know, she said it's been 30 years since she heard about you. And, this girl is, in her 30s at this point. And she's just shocked that she actually met her father. And it's been so long. Her mother just went in the nursing home a few years ago. Only if that she actually stumbled on this before, they actually could have found the way out together and reunited as a family. It would have been awesome. But, he goes on to tell more stories about the lighthouse and these labyrinths off to the side. But he says, I have an idea. He says, there's these two areas in the middle of the top of this lighthouse that has feet marks. And they actually fit our feet. So they actually walk over there. He already knew that they fit because he had a feeling something was going to happen. Someone was going to come in and this was going to be solved. It's like it was put there but needed a certain amount of something to actually change this whole situation. So he stands there and she stands there in the feet mark. They hold hands and he says, I need to pray with you, daughter. I need you to pray with me. And they start praying. They actually say the Lord's Prayer, which is really interesting because you're like, okay, why are they praying? Well, how is that going to help the situation? Well, it somehow does, because as soon as they start praying it, the whole labyrinth starts shifting. It starts quaking. Everything starts moving. Insane movements and just all this craziness starts happening here in this labyrinth. And actually, the whole lighthouse transforms into a magical garden. It was all these different colored flowers and these unique entities kind of all walking around and flying even. There's actually stuff in the sky way up too. You can't really make out what it is. But after they get done praying, they look around like, this is incredible. It actually worked. And, they're making their way through this garden at this point, in shock and awe. But they're just like, oh, we need to get out of here. This is the way out. They go all the way to the end and there's a cave. And they go to this cave, they go in, and it's really cold again. They're like, oh no, is this taking us back to the lighthouse? No, most caves are cold, but they had this eerie, disturbing feeling that, is this going to happen again? Are we going to be stuck in this place again? But they just brave through it, go to the lighthouse, and they see the light at the end of the tunnel, literally. And, about another half a mile walking, they're exhausted at this point. They're starting to feel again like aging again, and time's back. And they go to the end, and they get out, and it's actually the lighthouse door. It's open. And they rush out. And they're like, there's no way. There's no way made it through this lighthouse. There's no way that this just happened. And they look behind them, and you know what's there? The lighthouse. But the lighthouse is not the way it was. It was basically destroyed. There was only about 5 feet of concrete brickwork left of the lighthouse. The door was still there, but the door was actually on the ground this time. And what it said on the door is absolutely amazing. It says, those who pray in this lighthouse will be given the grant of everlasting life. And they didn't know what to think at this point. And it didn't really make much sense. They were thinking about it. But, that's actually for you to think about now as a viewer. What does that mean? What does that come to as a conclusion? Why does it sound somewhat mystical and kind of like a mystery in a sense, with the way it's actually said out loud and even written on the door? So they reunited, went to the nursing home, and actually he started talking with her mother, and she could not believe it was him. He just basically said, hey, I went on a long journey. I'm back. It wasn't meant to happen that way, but, I got caught by some bandits and stuff. He just made up something. But his daughter truly knew where he was this whole time, and they were actually able to reunite as a family. Oh, and by the way, the dog was there, still tied up. It's not really sure, though, how the lighthouse got destroyed. It's like, was it destroyed the whole time? Was this a grand illusion? But that doesn't make much sense either, because the lighthouse was fully there before she left. So, there was some like grand magicianal illusion here, or maybe some spell was cast on her. No one actually knows to this day of this really weird incident. But, they all make up, and actually the mother starts coming out of her, she has Alzheimer's and stuff. She starts coming out of it. She changed her diet and everything, and things start getting better for her, and they actually move all in together. And, it is actually a great experience. And they have the dog, and, everything is so good now. It came from a horrible experience in the middle of it to an okay one in the beginning to actually fantastic ending, them all reuniting. And the mother forgave him, of course, because, she had eternal love for him. It was absolutely a beautiful story. But if you guys enjoyed this Creative Minds episode, please like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate your support. A lot of work goes in these videos, and I will continue to make and improve these videos. And I ask for suggestions always. Guys, again, have a great night and a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time. Farewell.